These rocky shores where I call home, where my heart longs to be. Whenever I roam, it's these rocky shores, it's where I long to be. Yes, it's these rocky shores, they are home to me.
Whenever I leave here, it hurts me so. With tears in my eyes, oh, I hate to go. There ain't no work, and the kids need new clothes. The bills need paying, so off I must go.
These rocky shores where I call home, where my heart longs to be. Whenever I roam, yes, these rocky shores, it's where I long to be. Yes, these rocky shores, they're home to me.
Where did it all go? The life I once had on the ocean's gentle road. With tears in my eyes and my head in my hands, away from my family, I hope they understand.
That is these rocky shores where I call home, it's where my heart longs to be. Whenever I roam, yes, these rocky shores where I long to be. Yes, these rocky shores, they are home to me. Yes, these rocky shores, they are home to me.
Happy New Year and welcome to 1997, the Year in Review, Part 2. This week we'll be looking back at some of the happenings around our community from July until the end of December. We'll begin our look back after this.
It can happen in mere seconds. It can happen while you're in the house. The thing is, it should never happen. Keep lighters and matches out of sight and out of reach of children. The consequences couldn't be more deadly. A message from Health Canada and this broadcaster.
Early in June of this past year, a federal election saw a change in representation for this area. On Monday, voters from all across Canada had the opportunity to go to the polls to cast their vote for the candidate of their choice in the federal election. 807 of 1,629 eligible voters turned out at the polls on Monday to cast their ballots here in Burgeo. At the end of the evening, it was PC candidate Bill Matthews on top with 360 votes, Liberal Roger Simmons with 324 votes, and NDP candidate David Sullivan with 114 votes. 9 ballots were rejected. The trend was much the same all across the district as PC candidate Bill Matthews defeated Roger Simmons to become the MP for Burin St. George's. A flotilla traveling to Bonavista to meet the Matthews stopped over in Ramya early in June. 3 yachts from the flotilla visited our community. This past week, the flotilla traveling to Bonavista to meet the Matthew visited Ramia. 3 yachts from the flotilla stopped over here in Burgeo. With the flotilla making a scheduled stopover in Ramia, Burgeo native Garth Rose decided to detour to Burgeo for a few days. One other yacht accompanied Rose and another followed a while later.
Thank you.
When Rose came ashore on the wharf here in Burgeo, he had 5 sisters waiting to greet him.
This one is for Bridget, and this one for me. Yeah.
I had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Rose at the wharf about his trip thus far. Garth, can you tell us where you left with your yacht before you got here in Burgeo?
I left Whitby, which is just east of Toronto, went to Toronto, left there with the flotilla, and we've stopped in about 10, 12 ports to get here, last one being Isle Mort.
Okay, so how long ago did you leave?
May 11th, we left Toronto.
So have you had the same crew on your boat since you left?
No, we started out with, we changed crew in Quebec City, in Montreal, St. Anne-de-Mone, and we're going to lose one person here.
Okay, so how many more stops rather are you going to make before you arrive in Bonavista?
Somewhere around another 8 or 10, I guess.
So what was your trip like?
It was great. The weather, you couldn't ask for better weather. Like, you know, I fished in the Gulf and I've never seen it as nice as it was for the 2 days that we were crossing it.
Okay, well, it looks like you brought the sun with you today.
It sure is warm here. It wasn't so warm on the way down, but as soon as we got in here, it was pretty warm.
Okay, so are you going on to Ramia, or will you be staying here in Burgeo?
Stay here as long as the flotilla's in Ramia, then I'll join them in Franceway. June 7th, I think. It's June 8th, something like that.
Okay, so I guess you'll be having a few good old Newfoundland parties on the way down.
Yeah, we've had a few.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank you for speaking with us.
Oh, no problem. Glad to see you here.
Over a year of planning finally paid off in July for the Sand and Sea Cabot 500 Committee as the replica of John Cabot's ship, the Matthew, docked at the Seafreeze Wharf here in Burgeo. Cameras were flashing and everyone cheered as the replica of John Cabot's ship, Matthew, sailed up the reach last Tuesday.
Take me back to my western boat. Let me fish off Cape St. Mary's, where the hagdown sails and the foghorns wail. With my friends, the Browns and the Clarys, let me fish off Cape St. Mary. Let me feel my dory live to the broad Atlantic comber, where the tide rip swirls and the wild ducks whirl, where old Ned let me sail up Golden Bay with my oilskins all a-streaming from the thunder squall when I haul me trawl, and my old cabana gleaming with my oilskins all a-streaming. Let me view that rugged shore where the beaches all
No longer I'll be leaving she to go to Golden Bay. There's no more her waiting and wondering, with the wind enough to knock the house down, and we out on the water with nothing but a bit of canvas to get us home. No more her crying at relief to see me coming, with neither spar left upright, but every man, jack of the crew, still aboard of her. No, sir. There'll be no more August gales for her to ride out. Still, I could stand one more myself. One more load of salt to carry back from Spain. One more trip to the West Indies. One more summer up in Labrador. Or just one more day out in a dory with a little gaff sail. That'd be enough. Just one more day in Golden Bay.
A long, thin line, thinner and thinner as it goes, becomes a dot, disappears where there is nothing. These are the villagers. They are leaving their village, huddled into the wind. They are going away, out where there is nothing. They have gone away to nothing. The long, thin line dissolves itself into the emptiness of snow. At the end of the line, turned to the wind, she stands looking back. If she had been farther up the line, she could have been spared this instant. But where she is, at the end of it, she is forced to confront, face to face, the final moment of their going. In a second, when this scene unfreezes itself, she will turn, become again the last of the line, will turn and walk away, will become nothing in the windy distance. In this instant, however, she is frozen where she is, solidified against the wind, turned back toward the house. On the window, a flower pot, and in it a flower bloomed open to the day's bright light. Outside, everything is frozen still. Everything except the wind, and the wind's white howling.
Well, we've all seen hard times, and we weathered the storms, and we'll see them again. But then on some fine fall day with the air cool enough to put a bit of color in your cheeks and the woods ripe with decay, then you'll think that nothing can ever be wrong and that there's no storm that you can't weather.
Well, now, friends and companions, come join me in rhyme. Come lift up your voices in chorus with mine. Come lift up your voices, all grieve to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again. So here's a health to your company and one to my lass. Let's drink and be merry all out of one glass. Let's drink and be merry, all grieve to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again.
We're going to do a little tune for you that we wrote, or actually we didn't write, but we recorded a couple of years ago on our very first album. And it's a great old song called Out from St. Leonard. So anybody who knows the words, if you don't mind, please don't do any singing, because we do a lovely job of this one on our own. In the mid-1960s, the news rang out clear. Pack your bags and your nets, you must get out of here. Take your picks and your shovels, your rakes and your hoes. The government says you must pack up and go. Well, the news it soon spread in droves, or to go to Toronto to follow their goals, or to go to Placentia and live on the dole. And it's out from St. Leonard's and out from Toslow, they steam across the bay with their houses in tow, with their beds in the bow, their stoves in the stern, bound away with their sons and their daughters. Well, Skipper Jim Pittman said he'd never go, while his nets to be mended and hay to be mowed. Said he'd never work, no matter the pay, in a hockey stick factory out Stephenville way. And it's out from St. Leonard's and out from Toslow, they steam across the bay with their houses in tow, with their beds in the bow, their stoves in the stern, bound away with their sons and their daughters. And all politicians, they cursed and they swore, they rather would fight off in some distant war. For when they ceased to ramble and they ceased to roam, they could always return to a place they called home. And it's out from St. Leonard's and out from Toslow, they steam across the bay with their houses in tow, with their beds in the bow, their stoves in the stern, bound away with their sons and their daughters. Well, the islands and harbors and coals are ghost towns, and you need a long liner to harvest the grounds. And a big oil refinery now stands as a shrine to the daughters and sons who remember the time. They sailed out from St. Leonard's and out from Toslow, they steamed across the bay with their houses in tow, with their beds in the bow, their stoves in the stern, bound away with their sons and their daughters. They sailed out from St. Leonard's and out from Toslow, they steamed across the bay with their houses in tow, with their beds in the bow, their stoves in the stern, bound away with their sons and their daughters, bound away with their sons and their daughters, bound away with their sons and their daughters.
After being shut down for more than 5 years, 7 people were hired at the local sea freeze plant in July. A lot of volunteer work has been carried out at the sea freeze plant here in Burgeo over the past several months. A number of people will be going back to work at the facility in early August. As of August 4th, 7 employees will be back on the payroll at Sea Freeze. One of the employees, Clayton Ingram, who will be in charge of the operation, informed me that it will be another 1 to 2 weeks before the meal plant is back in operation. The boilers will be tested on Tuesday, and by Wednesday or Thursday there should be a supply of steam to the plant. The new electrical panel has also been installed and the power has been restored to the plant. For the past few months, the plant has been a busy spot as volunteers have been dismantling motors, repairing pumps and valves, demolition work, as well as cleanup. There is still other volunteer work to be done if volunteers are available. Sea Freeze officials are extremely pleased with the volunteer hours put in to date. The next phase for the plant once the meal plant is operating is the ice plant and refrigeration. When this comes online, it will mean more jobs at the Sea Freeze plant here in Burgeo. Burgeo residents did not have to go to the polls to elect a new town council in September. 7 people accepted nomination to fill the 7 seats on the Burgeo Town Council. Nominations for candidates to fill the 7 seats on the Burgeo Town Council were held this past week at the council office. Residents of Burgeo will not be required to go to the polls on September 30th. There were only 7 candidates seeking nomination to fill the 7 seats on the community's municipal council. Mayor Blaine Marks and Deputy Mayor Gord Tucker, along with councillors Aidan Bryan and Robert Sims, accepted nomination for re-election, along with newcomers Alistair Hand, Barbara Barter, and James Pink. Councillor Ernest Green has moved to Cornerbrook, and Ken Benoit and Walter MacDonald did not seek re-election. The candidates who chose to run will automatically be elected by acclamation, but they do not actually become councillors until they are sworn in. The new council has until October 14th, 14 days after the date set for the election, to be sworn in. The last municipal election here in Burgeo requiring residents to actually come out and vote was in 1985, when 14 candidates ran for seats on the municipal council.
Stay with us for more of 1997, the year in review, coming up in just a moment.
Today is very simple. Make this earth as beautiful as possible. Any questions? Does anyone know where Lisa is?
Yeah, I do.
Do a good turn for the earth from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Residents had to decide to go hunting or fishing on the first weekend of the big game season, which was also the weekend the recreational cod fishery. Boats of all shapes and sizes took to the water early Friday morning to take part in the recreational cod fishery.
As the sun came over the horizon on Friday morning, many boats were already on the water, trying to find the best fishing spot. Not long after daylight, it seemed like there were boats everywhere, as far as the eye could see. And although there were boats everywhere, we soon found out there were a lot more fish around than there were boats. In what seemed like no time at all, we had caught our quota for the day and were leaving the other boats to head back for shore. A good morning's work at about 8:15 a.m. I had an opportunity to speak with Bill Barry of Seafreeze again in September, at which time he revealed his plans for the Burgeo plant.
This is Bill Barry, and I'm speaking to you from Corner Brook. I just finished a meeting with people from your community, representing the union and representing the town, and they asked me to make a statement to inform, I guess, the people in Burgeo of what our intentions were over the near and medium term as far as the plant operations are concerned. And I guess the first thing that I would like to do is tell everybody that I'm extremely pleased with the effort that has gone into the refurbishing of the plant in Burgeo. Since last April 30th, when we had the last meeting here in Corner Brook, when we discussed things that were possible for the plant, we or our company, we've invested probably over $300,000. I think it's $326,000 back into getting the fish meal operation and other parts of the plant refurbished in Burgeo. And we started taking, utilizing that area of the plant now since the end of August, and we certainly intend to make that as continuous an operation throughout the year as possible. One other thing in our current plans is a further expenditure or investment on the meal side in Burgeo, somewhere in the vicinity of $400,000 or $500,000. We're going to invest in there to use it as a rendering operation for seal blubber, so that we can create a high-grade food-grade oil and industrial-grade oil as well from our seal operations. And so that will create more investment and more work and involve a few more people. Once, when my brother was down in Burgeo one time this summer, somebody asked him, they said, I guess the only thing that you're going to do in Burgeo, or a lot of people saying Burgeo, the only thing that you're going to do is fish meal. And my brother's comment to I'm not sure who it was, but my brother's comment to whoever asked him the question, my brother said, well, whoever said that, they'd be wrong. It's our intent. We certainly feel extremely positive about our re-entry into the community in Burgeo. We feel we're certainly very positive and pleased with the cooperation from the union executive that we've had so far. In terms of the contribution that the people have made, the people of Burgeo have made to help reactivate the plant, it's a very significant and worthwhile contribution, and certainly sends an enormously strong signal to me about your dedication and commitment as far as your own community is concerned. And it certainly helps me have the courage to make the investments and fight the battle that needs to be fought to make Burgeo one of the plants that survive in the future in Newfoundland. So I guess, and particularly I want to mention, the guys that are involved in the operation on a day-to-day in the Burgeo meal operation right now. We certainly couldn't be more happier about the time and effort and energy and commitment that all these people have shown. And it certainly makes our efforts seem not only worthwhile, but even all the more urgent that we do things to make the operation a long-term viable business. So I guess the next step is to tell you what our focus is from here. I've been trying to focus with Burgeo on, what is available as a core resource that in the near term we could access to get more people back to work. And there is a resource that's very close to Burgeo. It's more adjacent to Burgeo than anyone else, and certainly all of your trawlermen will know about this resource. It's the species Argentine, Burgeo Bank and St. Pierre Bank, that whole area. There's been Argentine in that resource now for the last, 20 or 25 years. Many of the vessels that fish perch in this area in the summertime and also through the fall find huge quantities of Argentine, and in many cases vessels that fish that area are asked by DFO to leave the area because the concentrations of Argentine are so high. Argentine is a kind of silverish like fish. Most people sometimes call them smelt like fish, but they're fairly good size. They're between 13 to 15 inches long, and they have a white fish material. This resource, this material, is good for a surimi-based product. Surimi is basically, we have a surimi line that we put in Canso 3 years ago to utilize the silver hake resource on the Scotian Shelf. And what you do, you basically fillet and skin the fish, and you put it into a surimi line, and you wash out all of the improperties or the impurities in the fish, so you end up with a tasteless, odorless material that you can add flavor to, and you can create things like imitation crab, imitation scallop, imitation lobster. So we're looking at, we know that the Argentine resource can work. Our question now, or our dealings with government, because there's been no research, no science, no fishery on this, other than Canada for many, many years allocated about 25 or 30,000 tons of this resource every year to foreign fleets, be it Russians or Japanese. But in general terms, no Canadian companies have ever indicated an interest in this. But now we want this resource. This resource is very strong in 3PN and 3PS, and we want to get this resource allocated to us from government for the Burgeo plant, to make the Argentine resource the key resource of rebuilding Burgeo. We've talked to government initially about a quota of 5,000 tons. I think this is the minimum number that we need to make the investments that we need to make in Burgeo in terms of surimi equipment and fillet processing equipment to process the Argentine resource. We're looking at conservatively, it needs investments maybe of $1.2 to $1.3 million to establish a surimi operation in Burgeo. So we need to, government has just given us an interim quota of 100 tons to experiment with, so we can get some handle on the types of gel strengths and textures that the Argentine has. We intend to embark during the next 2 weeks to catch this 100 tons and do some experiments in our Canso plant. It's our intention very quickly after that to sit down with government and look for their support to establish a firm quota for 1998 for Burgeo, so that we can aggressively pursue the installation of a surimi line and fillet processing equipment for Argentine in Burgeo. This is the initiative, I guess, probably that maybe some of you are waiting to hear, and it's the initiative that we believe will be one of the key or core ingredients to make Burgeo a long-term viable plant. You may ask, well, how many jobs, how many weeks, what? If we get a 5,000 ton quota, we can probably see conservatively 75 to 80 jobs, maybe a few more for a 6 or 7 month period, and these would be minimum numbers. We think the numbers, our objective is to get the Burgeo plant in the next year or two operational on the basis of the majority of the year for up to 150 people. We're hoping to be able to achieve that, but we think that Argentine is the base that Burgeo can use, and the argument that Burgeo can use for access to the Argentine resources, because frankly Burgeo, there is precedent setting where plants like St. Anthony were given shrimp and whatever. This resource is right on Burgeo's doorstep, and certainly no community would have a greater right or a more moral right to the access of this resource. So we're going to be making those arguments towards government, and we expect to be successful, because there is no basis under which that this fish should be denied to your community. And we're going to take the initiative with everybody that it needs to be taken so that we can install the appropriate equipment and the appropriate processing technology to make the surimi operation in Burgeo a realizable entity and a viable business. But that's our core initiative that we're embarking on now, and we intend to follow up with that with other things, such as the reopening of the cod fisheries so we can put cod back in Burgeo. Obviously, we need a core. We need something that the future of the plant can be built around, something that'll give us enough volume to make the numbers work in the primary and secondary processing operations. And we see Argentine as a totally underutilized species that no other Canadian company has sought. So we don't really think there should be any conflict within DFO or within the bureaucracy that this resource be allocated to Burgeo. So well, I was going to say kind of. It's not kind. That's where we're going. We're continually on a day-to-day basis now. We look at every day how we can progress this further ahead at as fast a rate as possible. You're going to be hearing a lot more about this over the next 2-3 months. Our objective is to progress far enough ahead with this very quickly this fall that we can be in 1998, we can have a full-fledged processing operation for Argentine in the Burgeo plant, and that core operation will then lead on to hopefully many other activities that we will add on to it then as the resources return, and I guess and other initiatives that we would take to give more full-time employment and make the operation viable. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The only other comment that I'd like to make is just to reiterate the comments that I made at the first of this. I'm extremely pleased about the cooperation from everybody in Burgeo, and you know, your efforts certainly give myself and my family the encouragement and desire to want to make your plant work and return the community and your lives to some element of stability and prosperity, and that's totally what we intend to do. Thanks very much.
A new business is setting up in the former government store located at the government wharf. Innovative Fisheries are planning to set up a plant in the building to process clams. The government store has been a beehive of activity lately. Innovative Fisheries Development Incorporated has leased the building with hopes of using it as a site to process clams. Innovative Fisheries Development is currently carrying out a resource assessment to determine if there are enough clams in the Big Barrasway, Little Barrasway, and Indian Hole areas to sustain a clam farm in those areas. Charlotte Story, president of Innovative Fisheries Development, was involved in the initial resource assessment conducted in 1994.
I'd like to know, in 1994, I was here hired by an American company to start a soft shell clam harvest. And at that time, I just thought there could be some potential to develop maybe an aquaculture farm, because clams don't move. I mean, clams are a stationary animal, and after they go through a certain stage in life, they set themselves in the stand and they stay there. So I thought it could be probably a good opportunity to have an aquaculture farm. So I applied for an aquaculture lease for the 3 areas, Big Barrasway, Little Barrasway, and Indian Hole. And I received my lease from the government Department of Fisheries. And from then I decided I needed to do a resource assessment of the clam beds to find out what's there, you know, what size the clams were, what was, you know, the babies coming along, what we call the juveniles, how many pre-recruits we have, which are another certain size, and then what were the harvestable ones, which are the 50 millimeters and over. So in 1996, I came to Burgeo, my company, Innovative Fisheries Development, and we started a survey of the 3 areas. So we had 7 people employed last summer for about 2 months, and they worked in the field. What we did last year, we took the 3 areas, Big Barrasway, Little Barrasway, and Indian Hole, and we divided up the whole area into 1 hectare square blocks. We went into each one of these areas and we recorded the depths, the substrate, if it was sand, if it was grassy there, if they found any predators. As well, we took a sample. We had almost like a bicycle ring, the size of a bicycle ring, and we put that on the bottom, and we have a pump, a suction pump, and everything within that circle, which was about 21 centimeters, I think, in size, was sucked up into into a mesh bag, and this mesh bag was very tiny, so it would catch everything. And so those samples were brought down to Burgeo, to the government, no, actually it was the Fisherman's Wharf last year, where we had 2 students hired, and they removed the clams from the grass and the mud and cleaned them, and then froze them. We then, in September, the survey was over. The company went back, and I went back to St. John's, and I went to the Marine Institute, where they hired a biologist to measure each one of the clams. They had to do the thickness as well as the weight of each clam. We also did some aging to try to see what size clam, how long it took clam to grow to a certain size. So the study was finished around January of 1997. So it took that long to measure all the clams. And so we then looked at the data that we had collected, and it showed in certain areas of 3 clam beds where there was high concentrations of clams. So for 1997, we decided to come back and to do another survey, because it's almost like a picture. Like 1996, we went and did a resource assessment. It's like taking a picture. You're getting one snapshot of what you think is there. So we wanted to the company wanted to come back into Burgeo to get another snapshot to confirm our information. And I mean, a resource assessment is going to take, every year we do work on the farm, we will be collecting new information, we will be getting a different understanding of how that wild population is distributed and how it grows. And based on that information, then the company will be putting together a management plan on, if the area has commercial potential, and how do we harvest that area as well as enhance it. Because the company is hoping that every year we will be able to take a certain amount of clams out of the 3 areas. So that's on the harvest side, but on the enhancement side, we also have to be reseeding clams, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Kelly Conway, a senior field technician working with Innovative Fisheries Development since June, is looking at such things as the food sources, spawning times, and water temperatures. Kelly told us about the importance of monitoring the clam resource.
Burgeo.
Well, Dave, some of the major community concerns include sustainable annual harvesting. Now, this means sustainable employment and positions on an annual seasonal basis. And these are very legitimate concerns, especially with issues that are grappling today in all fishery sectors. So the monitoring that I'm doing needs to be targeted at in that direction, and if we want to introduce enhancement of the wild populations and make culture techniques available to the producer. We need to justify that we have or are in the process of developing a better understanding of both the reproductive cycle and the patterns within the environment in which they live. Now, the key here is annual production, and so the monitoring will need to be a continuing part of this. Due to the annual variability and even with the seawater and with the natural environment, you have also within each area there are qualities that make them different and set them apart from the others. So with each aquaculture lease, so 3 months is not sufficient, and monitoring is necessary. It will be continual for the long term.
Innovative Fisheries currently has 12 local people employed. 6 of them are working at the government store. Charlotte said she was present at the Marine Institute last year when the clams were analyzed
and felt that work could be done here.
So over that period of 4 months, I watched what they were doing, and what they were doing was actually the measurement, the thickness, the width, and the measurement. That can be done here. So I decided that to create employment and to keep jobs, as many jobs to benefit from what we're doing, that the work could be done here in Burgeo. So we have 6 women who are doing the analysis, or the analysis of the clams as they come down, and so it's working out well.
Charlotte said there are a number of problems to be overcome if the commercial potential is there to harvest clams.
In 1994, during the harvest, DFO and Environment Canada, when we harvest, the clams have to be tested by DFO because they're shellfish, to make sure that there's no toxins in them and they're good for human consumption. During that process, they found that the clams, some of the clams, contained fecal coliform, and they were not allowed to be sold to the marketplace. They had to go through what they call a depuration or a cleansing process. So they closed the 3 areas, and those 3 areas are still closed. So that's why people are not supposed to eat clams in the area. We have to overcome that problem yet, and we've got a strategy in place. We're going to try to do some natural relaying and see how that works. But let's say all that works, and we're optimistic. We're hoping to process the clams here at the building in Burgeo, and they will be, the live market is the best market for soft shell clams, and that happens the best markets from July to probably September. So that's when the actual processing will be done.
The survey being conducted by Innovative Fisheries Development is scheduled to last until mid to late November. Innovative Fisheries Development hopes that by next spring they'll have a better idea on the future of the clam industry here in Burgeo. It was late in October when the dates were finally set for Burgeo's second Come Home year to be held in 1998. Well, folks, it's official. 1998 will be the year for Burgeo's second Come Home year. Representatives from the Sand and Sea Committee met with the Town Council on Thursday night to discuss plans for the event. Mark your calendars now. July 31st through August 9th will be Come Home year in 1998 here in Burgeo. Invitations for the Come Home year are currently being prepared, and you will be notified when they are available at the town office to pick up and send to friends and relatives. You will be notified on this channel as soon as they are available. The next Sand and Sea Come Home Year Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 29th, 8 p.m. at the Calder Healthcare Center Conference Room. New members are welcome. The committee also hopes to plan events such as Hunt's Island Day and Red Island Day. They're seeking residents of those communities to assist with the planning of those events. Also, if you have any ideas for the Come Home year, please call Paulette at 886-2830, Florence at 886-2456, or Dave at 886-2243. In addition to the Come Home year, 1998 also marks the 10th anniversary of programming here at BBS. We'll be celebrating by offering programs which will look back over the past 10 years. As well, we will be looking back at the past 10 years of some of our local programs, such as This Week in Review and The Bandwagon. Those programs will be airing throughout the Come Home year. It's sure to be a fun-filled event. George Baker and the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans held a public meeting here in Burgeo where they heard from representatives from groups in Burgeo and Ramia with concerns directly related to the fishery. A public meeting was held earlier today at the Community Center. George Baker and the Standing Committee on the Fishery held a meeting to get views from local residents with respect to the fishery.
Gentlemen, as Mr. Matthews said, the 5 political parties in the House of Commons are represented here today. We have, to our extreme right, the Honourable Yvon Bernier of the Bloc Québécois. To my extreme left, and he is the extreme left, the New Democratic Party spokesperson, Mr. Peter Stopper, MP from Nova Scotia. And to my immediate left is MP Gary Lunn. He's the party spokesman for the Reform Party of Canada. Now, Mr. Bill is the party spokesperson for the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, and I am the chairman of the committee, and of course I sign the report that we present to Parliament, as does everybody else. So we have the 5 political parties represented, and what we're going to do is we're going to present a unanimous report to the House of Commons. Now, we don't report to the Government of Canada. The Government of Canada may not like what's in this report, but we've got to give a report that reflects the views of the people we heard from. And so that's why it's very important here today that you say what's on your mind. You know, wouldn't want to go home after this meeting and say, well, I only wish I had said this because this is the key thing that affects us in this community for fishermen and fish plant workers. So, so that's basically it. And we report to the House of Commons, and then with a unanimous report concerning tags, concerning fisheries policy, concerning whatever you bring up, and we can agree to here, then the Government of Canada has got to sit up and take notice, because every single spokesperson, these are the people who write the policies for the Reform Party of Canada, for the PC Party of Canada, for the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP. So these are the key people in the House of Commons. So without any further ado, we're sorry we didn't make it last time. The weatherman was wrong, and the helicopters, and it's just like today, the helicopter pilot's telling us that Stephenville, that the weather is closing in Stephenville, and so therefore he wants us to be about an hour and a half and get out at that point. But anyway, so if you could keep your comments short as possible so that everybody who wants to speak can have their say. Let me say that, and perhaps the MPs might mention this in what they're about to say, we have been examining, and we have the evidence on every single quota, and we've been examining them. And we have the observer reports of all those foreign vessels. We have them all. We're supposed to have them, but we've got them. We're examining every single shred of evidence. And I was talking to, Bill and I were talking about this on the way down in the helicopter, that here we've got observer reports that show that foreigners catching silver hake just down here are getting a huge bycatch of Argentine. Huge. It's incredible. 11 vessels fishing silver hake with huge bycatches of Argentine. Now, that's going back to foreign nations. That's inside Canada's 200 miles up. So what Bill suggested a moment ago is what I think we should consider, and that is immediately when we go back to Ottawa this week. I can't say that everybody would sign the letter, but perhaps you could signify whether each one of your political parties would sign the letter. I don't want to put you on the spot, but a letter demanding that the Government of Canada, that the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, provide the necessary Argentine quotas to this section of the coastline so that the plants can open.
Postal services were finally restored in early December after a strike by some Canada Post employees left mail at a standstill for more than 2 weeks. On Friday of this past week, Postal Service got back to normal after a strike by Canada Post employees stopped the mail in its tracks for more than 2 weeks. For the first time since some employees with Canada Post went on strike in November, the mail truck made its regular run on Friday morning. The truck didn't have a big load of mail, since the only tractor-trailer to arrive in Stephenville was a tractor-trailer that had been parked in Port-aux-Basques since the strike began a little over 2 weeks ago.
The amount of mail going back was a different story, as people are anxious to get their Christmas parcels to their destinations before the December 25th, Christmas Day. The mail truck driver is expecting the mail to pick up on Monday. And hopefully all those expecting parcels for Christmas will receive them in time. Stay with us for more coming up after this.
The war amps know the cost of war. It would be compounding the tragedy if we did not tell about it. What better group to hear the story than the graduates of our child amputee program, Operation Legacy, seminars at which the war amps, partly through our Never Again videos, interpret the horror of war. These champs can then pass on the message. Operation Legacy, a war amps program warning of the tragedy in human terms.
That concludes our look back at some of the stories we've covered over the past 12 months. Be sure and join us again next Sunday for This Week in Review. Next week's program will be followed by Seal Hole Jam 2, which was filmed in January of 1997. Please stay tuned now for Women Jammin' Part 2 from this summer's festivities. On behalf of all of us here at BBS, have a safe, healthy, and prosperous New Year. Good night.